Oops. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I think we're live. I just had a technical. Okay, yeah, just a little hiccup. My name is Melody McAllister, and I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. I have an amazing panel of ladies and educators today, and I'm about to introduce you to them. But before that, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. I'm a mother, I'm an educator, I'm a parent advocate, and the reason that I am putting these together on Thursdays and Sundays is because I am on a mission to help break down the barriers between families and schools and communities, because I do believe that together we can just help our families be equipped for remote learning and help our teachers also to understand like the language that we use and the partnerships that we form, just how important that is to help our families to be successful in this year. And so a couple of things and people that I've already had on. Last week, I started with Laura Gilchrist, and she is the Vice President of Parent Camp. So that's something that if you're interested more in, please drop a question or I can put the link in there. Holly Clark and Alice Keeler joined me on Sunday, and we talked about like the language of technology and how that's a barrier sometimes. But today, I'm so excited. We are talking about how can we advocate for our children during remote learning, because that was something that came up a lot during crisis teaching. If your child had a 504 plan or an IEP, it just didn't get lost in the way. We have come back to this school year and we have to put things in place, but parents need to feel comfortable of advocating for their kids. And so the people that are on this panel today care about the community and their families just as much as I do, and they share this vision. And so we're going to talk about that today. And so please, while you're watching, if there's any comments or questions that you have, drop in the comments and we will get to you. And so the first person I want to introduce to you today is my friend, Melissa Sidebotham. Melissa, will you please tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I've been in education since the early 90s, so it's been a while. I've been a classroom teacher at the high school level and the middle school level. I'm currently an elementary school principal. I'm also just about to release a children's book called The Lab Coat Kids, and that's happening this fall. So I'm super excited about that. It's a graphic novel about neighborhood kids solving mysteries with the scientific method. So that's really fun. And I also was able to do a really amazing project with my good friend Nicole Biscotti over this past year. So we co-founded something called the EduTable, where we bring parents and educators together to really help build that relationship when we start a podcast. So it's been a wild ride and a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Nicole, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, first, Melody, thank you for having me. My name is Nicole Biscotti. I live in Arizona. I'm originally from New York City, though. This year, I will be teaching just over the state line in California. I'm super excited to start at my new school. I teach Spanish in high school, and I'm also a mother of 4 kids. And has ADHD, which sent me on a very long journey that I'm on, obviously, to learn how to support her. And that process really taught about the school system. ADHD, it taught me about where the lack of supports are coming from. So we looked together. That's also going to be out this fall. The first book, this winter, excuse me. The first book is directed towards teachers. There's a lot of leading educators that have strategies in the book. And then the second one will be to parents. I also co-founded the EduTable with Melissa, and it has been very exciting to have conversations on our podcast and on social media, because I really believe that, and particularly I'd like to say now with our current situation that we're all facing, parents and teachers are the people that care the most about kids. And when we come together, it's always for the benefit of our children.
We all totally agree with you. I love that you said that. Thank you so much. And thank you both for being here and for all that you do to bring parents to the table. I would love I put the Twitter handles for everybody. Please follow them. These are amazing educators to follow, every single person on this panel tonight. And my good friend Statia, will you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
I would love to. Thanks for having me. My name is Statia Paschel. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina. Even though I've lived in Texas for 20 years, I will always be a South Carolinian. It is near and dear to my heart. I am going into my 18th year of education. I currently serve as an assistant principal in Garland, USA. And I am looking forward to joining in the conversation with all of these powerhouse ladies. I am the proud mother of a 13-year-old baseball machine, so he keeps me busy. We have had a slowdown with the pandemic, but we still stay quite active. I love him dearly. He's my little chocolate drop. So I'm just glad to join all of you ladies and everyone out in the audience. And I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And our last panelist, but definitely not the least by any means, is my friend Keisa Leclerc. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Good night, everyone. My name is Keisa Leclerc Marti. I am from Puerto Rico. I live in Texas and I work in Garland, USA as well. I've been a teacher for 17 years, or I have been in the education, for 17 years. I've been a bilingual teacher for 15 years. And my last 3 years, I went deep in the dyslexia field. For 2 years, I just finished my 2-year training to become a dyslexia therapist, and I'm currently working on getting certified. So I'm excited to be here tonight and help with this conversation as well.
Wow. So, and I love that you all shared your background because I've worked with you in different capacities, but your leadership is what drew me to you and to ask, like, would you be on this with me? Because every single one of you loves parents. I've got to see Statia and Keisa in action, but like in real life, but online, I've got to see the discussion that Nicole and Melissa offer online. So I am so amazed by all of you. And one of the first questions, well, actually, before we get to the first question, if you're watching and you have any questions, please drop them in. We would love to hear from you. And even if you're watching this when it's no longer live, we can still get back to your questions. So if there's something weighing on you or you want us to address, just drop it in the comments and we'll definitely get back with you. But the first question we have that my friend Melissa is going to talk about first is, how have family partnerships made impacts in your school community or teaching practice?
Well, that is a huge question, and it has really big impacts on every teacher, every educator. If you don't reach out and make those relationships with families, you're going to have a hard time. You need to be able to understand where people are coming from, and nobody knows a child better than that mom or that dad or that grandparent. They are able to tell you so many things that you won't be able to get to immediately. So building that trust is huge. One thing that I was able to do in my position was we offer parent workshops, and not only because I work in a private setting, so we didn't just want to offer those workshops to our own families, but we wanted to open them up to the large. And so we made a deal with one of our local bookstores, and before, this was over the past few years, we were able to offer those workshops at the bookstore for free. And so it was a great way to not only get to know my own families, but also to get to know people in the community. And it was nice because we were able to position ourselves as, even though we're at school, we're here for our community, and that's huge. And even with being in this pandemic with COVID, having the podcast and being able to offer virtual one-on-one meetings with families or small group time where we can talk about any kinds of problems that they're having, those are really the times where we can build those strong relationships. But and something that I've learned even through the pandemic with my teachers, we found that small group instruction and checking in weekly, one-one, with families just to see how they were doing, to find out if there was anything that was going on emotionally or academically, whatever it happened to be. I think that we have built even stronger relationships than we ever have previously, and it's all because we made it a priority because we couldn't be physically together. So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing to have happen. And here we are at the beginning of the school year, and some schools are going to be able to go back in person, and some people are going to have to start distance learning. And the thing I hear over and over again from both parents and educators is, months into the school year to build those relationships first. We don't have that this time. But given what I saw, I think you can easily build those relationships if you make it a priority. So.
Thank you for sharing. Yes. Does anybody else want to share their thoughts on the different family partnerships and how they've made impacts on your school community or teaching?
I can say it makes me feel supported too. Not only students feel supported when they see their parents and teachers working together, but us as teachers also, we feel supported. So on the personal level, I can add that.
Definitely. And I know when I was in the classroom, some of my students that had a lot of different needs, and sometimes it came across as anger, and sometimes it came across as very out of control behavior. When I made a relationship with their parents, like that's glued me to them in a way that nothing else had prior to that. And so over the years, I've had a lot of students with different needs, and that was the key piece that always helped us to make the progress. And the progress that students make are different, with each individual child, but it is possible for sure. Yeah. All right. Our next question. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to kind of piggyback on that, and this is, I'm sure most people know this already, but when you have a child who, for whatever reason, is struggling in the classroom, and it could be because they're missing social cues, or there's some other learning difficulty or social difficulty that they are struggling with. And actually, it reminds me of your children's book, The I'm Sorry Story, where the main character really has a hard time making friends, and he feels that people don't understand him, and his family may all feel that way too. But that's based on real experiences that you've had. You and I have talked about that. We've all seen kids like that in our communities. But picking up the phone as a teacher or as a principal, just to say, hey, I had this interaction with Johnny today, and he was telling me all about this and that. A lot of times those families don't get positive phone calls. And when you actually put in that time and do that, you see just the relief just wash over them. And you can hear it in their voice. You can see it in their body language. You actually see my child. You care about my child. And when you build up that trust, when it comes time you really need to problem solve, you've got a much stronger foundation from which to build. And you can then frame things in a way where we're a team. It's you and me together. We're going to figure this out. This is a coaching relationship, and we're both partnered up. And it makes all the difference. It makes those difficult decisions, those difficult conversations, so much better and so much more productive.
Oh, agree. Does anybody want to add to that?
Totally agree.
Yeah, I have. It's funny because I had a student when I was in first grade a couple of years ago. It was my first year in first grade, and he came later into the school year, and I thought, this kid's going to make me want to quit my job. Like, I am not equipped to deal with the needs that he has. And I could not get his mom in a conference. I couldn't get her on the phone for anything. And he was only in the first grade, but his kindergarten year, he was at a different school. And she was really traumatized by the way they treated her. So she did not want to have anything to do with me. And it took a miracle, but we finally got her a conference, and she and I talked about that. And I just listened to her. I didn't bring up a lot of the stuff that was happening in class because I could sense that what she needed to say was way more important. The next day, my student comes in and he says, "Are you friends with my mom now?" And I was like, well, I don't know if she considered me a friend or not, honestly, but I just lied to him. I was like, yeah, we're friends. We're good friends. And that was it. Like, I'm not going to say it was happily ever after by any means, but it cut down by 70% a lot of the behavior issues that were happening, because he knew, like you said, I saw him and there was that relationship. He knew that I cared. And it was like, he was still trying to push his boundaries to see if I was going to give up or not. But really, we had a very successful year after that. So I totally believe in what you're saying and love everything you just said. But something, the reason that this is really the reason that I want to do this is what keeps families from speaking up. Nicole, you do a lot about, you know a lot about this, and I would love for you to take this question.
A lot of things from speaking up. I think that there's cultural barriers. I've seen, I've worked in places where most of the community was from a different background or cultural background or spoke a different language than a lot of the teachers or administration, and there was not any sort of bridging going on to handle that, to make connections. And I think that overall, I teach at the high school level. I think a lot of times parents really don't know where to start because their kids have 6 teachers and they don't know who to call, who to communicate with, how to communicate. And I think that sometimes at the high school level, we're not always very friendly in terms of reaching out and really opening the door for those relationships with parents. So I think that really, as a teacher, I've learned that it's a good investment of my time to do so in the beginning. I also wanted to comment that I've noticed during the pandemic that it changed the dynamics of the phone calls. So instead of me calling and saying, so-and-so is failing to talk about things, it was really more like I wasn't the teacher and they were the parent. It was, oh my gosh, are you guys okay? And the parents doing okay, and are you guys okay? And it was kind of like, in some way, the pandemic kind of leveled the playing field, I felt like, because we were no longer in these sort of stiff roles. We were just people. And we were all we have something in common now, this horrible thing, right, to have in common, but we're all going through something at the same time. And I thought that it was interesting how those conversations, a lot of times, in all honesty, especially initially, really specific to academics. They were more about how's family doing and how's your family doing, kind of what I guess you'd call small talk. But that created more of a rapport than all of the Johnny's failing conversations and, grades and these are the metrics really ever could, right? So I'm hoping I always also laugh because I don't like parent-teacher conferences and I don't like 9 o'clock coffee with the principal because I think it excludes a lot of people. But I feel like sometimes what we're got mine too. But I feel like sometimes what we need to do is get back to the basics, right? Let's just get back to being human beings and relating, and not always trying to get right to the point of school, but just get to know each other a little bit. So I have a hope that now that we've had some conversations with parents that are not necessarily about the metrics of the class, that hopefully that can contribute to being willing to being more related in general, just getting to know him.
Right. Definitely. Oh, you cut out for a second, Nicole.
Yes.
But definitely. Keisa, did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
It's the technology. I'm sorry that I cut you off. If you put it in the private chat, I'll drop it in the comments, whatever you were finishing saying. But Keisa, what were your thoughts on this?
I thought about immediately, it took me to that 504 meeting setting where I'm sitting there and I'm reading on a report. And some of the words I'm using, because they are on the report, are big words. And not always parents understand the language that you're using. And that could also create a barrier for them to communicate with you. So most of the time I can read it on the parents, like, what are you talking about? And I immediately know that I have to change my language, that I have to stop reading that report and break it down for the parent, because it is important for these parents to understand what is going on with their kids, and how this 504 plan or this IEP is going to change his educational, life. So break it down for the parents, use a simple language as well, especially when it comes to this, setting, because, and it's also another thing. It is important for parents to know it is okay to ask. It is okay to stop me and tell me, can you understand? Can you explain a little bit that more? And some parents feel shy from that, and I would love to see that more parents, hey, I'm not understanding what you're saying, can you break it down for me? And I will gladly do it, but yes, parents need to ask. It's okay to ask, and it's okay to say, how is this going to benefit my child? And we'll definitely,
Yes.
bring it to them.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I remember as a young teacher, when I was in those meetings, I felt overwhelmed by the language and I felt scared to ask. And so something that I always thought was like what you said, Keisa, like, do parents know that what they have to offer is more important than anything else that we have to offer, and that they're okay and that their consent is more important than anything else? That is
Right.
that is so important. And I
And
interrupted you, Stacia.
it's okay. It's okay. But one of the things, and I'm glad Nicole touched on it, yes, there's a negative cloud attached to this pandemic, but what it has done is allowed us to have an opportunity to reimagine an education and what is a priority for us. I don't know about any of you, but when the connection to parents became more important than the finishing of assignments, I had a breath of fresh air that just went throughout my body, because we didn't go into this business to be about data points and tests and making sure that everyone's sitting in rows and you're this, perfect student according to this archaic model. We got into this because we have a love for seeing children grow and develop. And that's a holistic picture of the child growing. And so sometimes what I have to do when I'm speaking with my teachers and we're talking about parent engagement, because you'll hear them say, well, our parents aren't engaged, they don't ever come to any events, or our parents aren't engaged, they don't ever answer the phone. Well, is engagement limited to me showing up to be a field trip chaperone or me coming to the PTA program? Might engagement look like when Johnny's at home, I'm having conversations with him about how important it is for him to respect you in the class, because his education is something that can never be taken away from him and open doors for him that no one else can close. So when we think back to what does engagement look like, and we also have to remember that lots of families don't jump in because they trust us to be the experts. When I go to the dentist and he tells me, hey, you've got a cavity in tooth 23, I say, okay. I don't go into, oh, well, let me see, let me talk to. So when we are telling our parents, this is where your child's performing, or these are the expectations of our school, or these are the results of this test, they trust us to be the experts. So the burden of collaboration, the need for it to happen, that falls on us. We have to be the one that make it a priority to make that space open for families to know your voice is important. Yes, I have a level of expertise in this area, but it's about a parent, student, and teacher connection. And we need all sides of that triangle to be strong in order for your child to succeed.
Yes.
Yeah. Amen. If I didn't think it would have cut out your sound, I would have been screaming it. But yes, amen. And that's funny because last week when I was talking to Laura, that's what I said, a triangle. Like it's absolutely so important for us all to be together. Yeah, I can't do that because I'm not a part of that, but I wish. So jealous. This was great. Does anybody want to add any more before we go on to the next question? Or all right. Okay. And so how do you encourage families to advocate for their children? Like, what do you actually do? Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nicole.
Was she going to say something?
I think, Nicole, I don't know, I'm going to say something. Okay.
I was going to and then it froze. I'm so sorry. I'm having a little trouble over here. No, I just wanted to say on the tail end of what was said before is that sometimes we make a lot of assumptions about how parents want to engage. And I think it's very simple. I think we need to ask them how they would like to engage. Maybe make it a little more open. You know, like sometimes I hear people say things like, well, they don't want to come to our council meetings. Well, maybe they don't want to engage that way. Maybe they don't have time in the evening. I don't know. But I just think that we need to be a little bit more open-minded about what parent engagement looks like.
Definitely, definitely. And so how do we encourage families to advocate for their children, especially when they do? And so if you're watching and you don't know what a 504 is, that's usually like when your student needs extra support, like maybe they have dyslexia or maybe they have ADHD or, you know, on a spectrum of some sort. They're not necessarily in special education, but they definitely need extra support. So I like how Keisa said earlier, we have to break that language down. So if you're watching and you're thinking, what the heck is a 504? That I think that comes from the law that it is. Is that what 504 comes from?
Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead, please.
The way I see it, 504s and IEPs are those educational contracts with you and the educational system. And that's what's going to guide and help your child. Everything your kid needs, it's going to be in that plan and it must be followed.
Mm-hmm. And so like, go ahead, Statia. Are you on mute? You're on mute, my friend. But you seem like you were saying something pretty amazing.
I know.
It looked really
You're
good.
On mute. It does look so good. I'm wondering if I can do anything. Okay, well, she's figuring that out. How would you guys encourage families to advocate for their children?
When it comes to like 504s and IEPs in mind, the first thing that comes to my mind, and you guys can help me.
Oh. Wait. Here's Stacia. Okay, I can't. I'm sorry to interrupt you. So Stacia, okay, now try to talk. It says you're not muted now.
Okay. Can you guys
oh
yeah. I was just saying, I love that idea of a contract, because when you go into a contract, it's an agreement between two entities. And I think that would help to change the mindset of this is a one-sided, we're telling you what it is that we're going to do. But this is a binding, you get to say, I would like this, I wouldn't like that. And we're giving you our word that this is how we're going to support your kiddo.
Yeah.
Definitely. And Keisa, I cut off you so rudely. Were you going to also add something?
Yes, I was going to say, addressing the how can we advocate or how can parents advocate for their kids. The first thing that to me is very important, and we talk a little bit about it already, is know your child's disability. You need to understand the struggle and get familiarized with the disability. Understand the IEP and the 504, like we said before, it is okay to ask questions. How is this accommodation going to benefit my kid? You know, and once you understand, then you can advocate for your child. Because I'm sorry, I lost my thoughts. But once you know what your child what this disability embeds, then you can advocate for him. The next thing I would say is also, we've talked about it, communication. That communication is key. It is so important. Um, Things that you can do at home as a parent. Uh, Try to familiarize, especially during this time. Try to familiarize with technology. I not everyone is tech savvy, but we can try because some of our students will need this technology during this time, and it's going to be key. Uh, Provide your child with a safe educational space at home. This is so important for therapy, virtual therapy, to be effective. Try to have a place in your house where there's no distraction or the least possible distractions. Um, some of our kiddos have coexisting conditions, and this can be a challenge, but it will definitely help us to do an effective therapy. And that setting is very important. There's a lot of tools out there that you can use, and we are more than willing to help you familiarize with them so you can help your kids. Um, and pretty much advocating for your child, I mean, advocating for my student has become my passion, but there must be an open communication as a parent with your child. You need to help him understand his disability. Some of my students, sometimes they don't even know why they come see me. And that's a big thing for me, you know. I need to take the time to explain to them that there is a reason for their struggle. And parents need to do this as well. You know, there is a reason for the struggle that you're having, and we're here to help you. But in order for me to help you, I also need to teach you how to advocate for yourself, because mom and teacher is not always going to be there. So help your students, you know, advocate for themselves, focus on their, not only on their weaknesses, but we're going to focus on their strengths. Most of these kids have so many strengths. They're creative, they're artistic, you know, and not everything they hear has to be negative. Uh, Help, we got to teach them how to cope. We got to teach them how to understand their weaknesses and their strengths, how to use those resources, and how to ensure, this is a big one, especially for those kids that are moving into middle school, high school, and other settings. uh, they need to advocate for their accommodations. They need to say what they need. Sometimes that just falls apart when they go to upper grades, and they need to know what they need so they can advocate for themselves and say, you know, hey, one of my accommodations is such and such, and I need it now that we are testing, or I need it now that I need to do this assignment. It's key. It's key.
I love it. Great. Thank you for sharing. I know, Melissa, you have something to add.
Well, I just wanted to say, you know, we parents do need to advocate. All parents need to advocate for their children, regardless. I mean, if they have a 504 or an IEP or not, because again, every child is going to perform differently in different situations. So, for example, when we were all doing that our crisis distance learning in the over the spring, we have some of our students who are very much extroverted. They did not function well with distance learning. They didn't have the ability to move. It was too much screen time. But then our introverted students, or some introverted students, because of course all kids are different, but they really blossomed in the online space because they didn't feel like they were on a spot, and they could answer in the chat rather than speak directly to the entire class. And so I think that parents were, I think we all, if we can look for the silver lining here, I think we were all given a little bit of a gift with this, because parents got a big window into their child's academic experience. And teachers were able to get a window into that child at home and also see them in a completely different light. So I think it's going to be extremely important for us to take all of those lessons that we learned and hold on to them as we move forward into the future and see how we can really make class a safe place in person for those introverted kids, and online space active enough and engaging enough to accommodate those more extroverted kids. So there's so much to think about when you're talking about how should I advocate for my child. There's a lot of different pieces. I just wanted to put that part in there.
I'm glad you did. Statia, you look like you have something to share. And Nicole, I saw you too, so go ahead.
Go ahead, Nicole.
You asked the
Was I
question,
muted
how do you
still?
encourage families to advocate for their child? And I'd like to say, the way I encourage them is to never, I would encourage them to never stay quiet. And what I mean by that is that nobody knows your child the way that you know your child. I am a teacher, I have several advanced degrees, and I'm a caring teacher. But I don't know your child the way you know your child. So I can tell. And I would say never stay quiet. If you have a concern, if something doesn't seem right to you, whether you understand the educational jargon or not, the IEP, the 504, all that's whatever it is, but you and question things and not be intimidated, because at the end of the day, lives, he only has me to speak up for him. In my case, some people have two parents, but he only has me to be his advocate. At the end of the day, he's going to go from different classroom to different classroom, but I have to be that person. So I really encourage parents, whatever you're feeling, you're 99.9% of the time, you're right. there's something going on. And the teacher then can help you with, having the background in education to figure out maybe the right supports or give options. But I would say never stay quiet.
Love it.
Yeah. And Nicole, my mom, 20 plus years ago, she must have heard that same mantra. One of the big push within me that drove me into education was a sour taste that was left in my mouth from a bad experience with a teacher. I was in advanced English in high school, and the grading cycle had ended, and the teacher said, Statia, Sonia, Fran, Jamisha, stand up. So we stood up, and she told the class, I want you to look. And so the class is looking at us, and one of the guys in class was like, what? And she said, I want you guys to see that these girls made the highest grade in the class this 9 weeks. And I want y'all to just look and see who made the highest grade in the class. And so another kid was like, I mean, they're smart. What's your point? Sonia, Fran, Jamisha, and myself were the only Black students in class. Her point was not to uplift us. So Statia took these things in, went home and talked to my mom about it. And so my mom, she's very, very good at taking things in, not overreacting. And she listened to what I had to say. She called the other parents. And the other parents were like, oh, well, yeah, I don't really think that's a big deal. I mean, so what? And my mother told them, this is a big deal. And you will go with me to talk to the principal about this. For me, that could have been a break me moment. Had my mother not gone in, had a conversation, make that teacher explain what was your purpose and the detrimental effects you are having on my child, I might have believed her low expectations of me and began to not perform in her class, because that was extremely embarrassing, extremely embarrassing. So I know that if I didn't have a mom who stood up for me, it could have caused me to go left instead of right. So yes, Nicole, you got it down packed. The mantra we need to tell parents: never be quiet. Never be quiet, because your child needs your voice always.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's such an incredible story. And I'm glad for your mom, because you are an amazing woman and I've got to see you in action. So, wow. Thank you for sharing. I don't even know what to say after that, but I just hope that parents and teachers are watching and community are watching. What we do in the classroom has such an impact. And it's not just like a momentary impact, it's like a lifetime impact. And I'm so glad that your mom spoke up. Nicole, I'm so glad that you speak up. And I just want to say, be that parent. Who cares if you're that parent? Just be that parent. You know, then you can brag about it when your kids are graduated from high school and say, yeah, I was that parent. So what? Look at my kid, you know? And that is an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. And before, I've taken a lot of time, and I'm so sorry if I've taken up too much of your time, but I really think that these are great things to talk about. But how can remote learning impact students with 504 IEPs? We've already kind of talked about that, but how is your district? How are, do parents, how can they understand what the districts are doing? Because I was just reading something today that said there are some therapies that are not going to be available just because they're not going to be in school, and you can't social distance and still be in this, you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen right now. But then, like Keisa said, like providing a safe space for the therapies that still can happen is super important. So what have your, and Stacia, you can lead off with this. What have your districts been doing to make it a priority for our students?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the reasons why I'm proud to be in Garland, USA is I have really been impressed with how our district has handled this entire shift that we had to make. And one of the things that the district is providing for our students that have accommodations is they have just paid for a program which allows students to have a variety of Chrome extensions to give them some of the services that they would receive in school. So we have where they can have a text to speech, so students can speak and then the program types out what they're saying. They also have another program that reads the word. It'll read a phrase. It'll read the entire passage to them if necessary. Now, unfortunately, there are some things, which is why teachers are degreed experts. There are some things that a computer can't do for a child. There are some services that unfortunately can only be provided face-to-face. And so some of those things will be delayed, but everything that we can do to give those remote accommodations and empowerment for our students, we've done that. Our dyslexia teachers have live sessions with our students, so they're not missing out on that one-to-one feedback, immediate, connection and teaching there as well. We are still having our virtual ARDs. We're still having our virtual 504s. So students, if changes need to happen to their IEPs or their plans for the year, we're still able to do that. Now, we have an expert dyslexia teacher therapist here who can share anything that I might have left out. And Melissa, I'm sure you guys have got some things going and definitely would love to know how it looks on a high school level.
I can totally agree with what you said right now. The way we did it, we established that communication from the beginning. The moment we knew we were not going back, we were in constant communication with parents. And I'm talking not just a phone call, it's different platforms of communications. We will meet with our students. I would meet with my students 4 times per week, 1 hour session, just the way it happened when we were face to face. So we would provide them with therapy. We progress monitor virtually. I mean, we try to keep it as natural as we were used, or we are used to have it.
Right. As possible.
Exactly, as possible. Thank you.
Yeah.
And a lot of communications with our parents was key because some of them were having issues with technology. We had to train them. We had to walk them through. I know our department had meetings, with parents and a lot of orientation, but that communication piece make a big world of a difference, a big world of a difference. For that program you were mentioning that the read to text Snap, it's called Snap. Can we mention it? Is it okay if I mention the name of the program? Okay. It's called Snap and Read, and I love it. It will translate, it will simplify vocabulary, it will read for the student from any web page, and it has so many other things. So I am very happy that my district purchased this program and that our students are going to benefit from it.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. Shout out to Dr. Lopez and our board of trustees. Woo woo.
Melissa, Nicole, do you guys have anything that do you want to share anything that your districts are doing?
Sure. Now I am working with
To
a
be honest,
private
I'm
school
new,
system.
so I'm learning.
So sorry, Nicole, did you want to add something? I apologize.
It's the technology's fault, y'all.
All right. So, okay. All right. So I do work with a private school system. So we don't have a special education department, and we don't have a large number of students with 504s or IEPs. But we still want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to reach every single student and help them along their journey. And one thing that we have committed to doing is families as much choice as we possibly can safely. So my school is actually in California. And so we are offering a fully online academy option that parents can opt into. And then we are also offering an in-person option for those families who would prefer that face-to-face. And now, again, we are going to be following every single mandate that comes out from Governor Newsom and the state and local health departments. But we're trying to open our doors as much as we possibly can safely, because there are a lot of things that just don't translate as well virtually.
Right.
And I think being able to give both of our teachers and our families that choice and making sure that our safety protocols are stringent, I think that's the best thing that we can do right now.
Yeah. And Nicole, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're the technology. I know you have a lot to say. And in fact, but we have definitely gone over time, but it was a great conversation, y'all. I want to thank you for sharing your time. And I know that several people have come in and out, and I hope that they took some gems with them. I know that I have, and I'm just so blessed to be in the presence of all of you, even though I'm in Alaska and you're all over the place, but it's still amazing. And technology is amazing. I mean, it makes learning still possible from public schools and in private schools or whatever. I mean, it's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise today. If anybody's still watching, I will be doing this again on Sunday. We're going to have a panel that talks about math. Like if you've been frustrated with your kids because you're doing the new math, we wanted to go over that and share some wisdom on how you can encourage your kids and how we can empower parents to not get discouraged with the new math, or and talk about the process of learning math and how it's so important. But thank you all for joining us. I'm just so grateful for every single one of you. Grateful for everybody who's watching and for sharing everything. And I hope you have a great night, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.